All right, I believe we are on the stream right now. So I want to thank everyone for their patience in that regard. My name is Juma Shatara. I am the owner of Skyrise CRE. We are a boutique brokerage that typically is helping investors from $1 to $10 million assets throughout the state of Indiana. We focus on all property types, but what we focus on primarily is industrial and retail assets. And I want to go into a recently leased property at 911 Oliver Avenue here in Indianapolis, Indiana, 46221, which is on the Near Westside of Indianapolis. So you can see in the pictures, we're going to talk about some of these things that are sticking out and just talk about the deal in general, some takeaways, and we will go into details right now. So when it comes to today's agenda, I want to break it down into 8 key areas. We want to talk about the background and timeline on this area. I've been involved with this property several times. The renovations and improvements that the ownership and I put together, the market and area overview. I think it's really important to go into those details. Leasing evolution and rent growth on the multiple times we have leased this property, the pros and cons of this particular asset, and the objections we thought we did get when we put it out to market. The tenant and deal highlights, key takeaways from this property assignment, and then finally talk about some Q&A and call to action. So why this deal matters. It is in the path of progress in Indianapolis's one of the more transformational projects in the city, close to $600 million on the Elanco headquarters campus. And when they moved from a greenfield into an Indianapolis, it was a major step. This is on the former GM stamping plant, 150-acre campus, one of the last large swaths of land when it comes to being in this close of proximity to downtown Indy. The Near Westside retail historically has faced a lot of leasing friction. And what I mean by that, the majority of the larger properties on the major thoroughfares that we'll go into in a second just don't have real inventory that hits the market for lease. Some properties do come to market, smaller retail and office properties, but it's very few and far between. And we have to talk about the tenant quality, so why this deal matters. And this is not just something you throw online and wait for tenants to approach you. So with this older inventory and what this particular asset is for auto sales, was pretty important on who we were going to approach to be the best tenant. Positioning, timing, and the landlord's flexibility really made the difference. So with the timeline and us being involved on this asset, we helped the client buy this property in July of 2023. We actually had this property under contract not once but twice before closing on it. And the initial challenge was the space didn't really leave a lot to be desired. The biggest headwinds that we're going to talk about is the size of the property. And we need to make some renovations before repositioning it to be back on the market. Really mapping out the competition, who in tenants' minds and the tenant brokers' minds on who we're actually competing against. And then finally talking about our outreach strategy on how we actually got this leased. So the renovation strategy, you can see a couple of the photos on really just making this a light value add property. We don't really need to go luxury. This does not have a formal showroom. This does not have bays for auto repair. We're talking about very light upgrades, including but not limited to new lighting, drop ceiling improvements, new flooring. We put space heaters, as you can see in the pictures, and window AC units, plumbing fixture upgrades for the bathroom. Vanity replacements, and this is a general cosmetic refresh. That's all these properties really need. You can see the property was gray, and we made some some aesthetic improvements to the exterior. And again, this was not intentionally. This was intentionally to be just something practical, to have a clean white shell for someone just to come in and operate immediately. So the leasing evolution over time on this property tells a bigger story about the Near Westside. We had an initial lease structure 2 years ago at $2,000 a month with an increase in year two. This corridor had a lot less momentum. The full campus was not complete, and the tenant demand was a lot thinner. Even though at this price point, at this entry level of a car dealership, the hits really weren't coming, and when they did, people were just trying to beat us up on price. Whether it was just the tenant, unrepresented, or was other brokers representing them, not really knowing what the market was actually going to demand when it came to pricing. So we went up substantially, not 50%, but basically 33%, going up a lot in this area, and then also pushing up substantially in the further years. The reason why we also wanted to structure it being a 2-year lease, when we did eventually get it leased in late 2023, we wanted it to be flexible for my landlord. We never knew if we were going to keep this long term. So now knowing the area has got a lot better, and we can also increase prices on the rental rate, it really just made a lot more sense to keep the assets and also push rents where we are right now. So the corridor is getting better. Of course, the whole Elanco campus and possible other buildings through the Purdue partnership will eventually get built. And the inventory still remained to be very limited for anyone that was seeking an asset on the open marketplace for lease. So we had a stronger tenant fit with good credit. We vetted this individual very well, and it just made a lot of sense for this particular individual and their ownership group to come in and lease. So why the rent increase? Again, talking about the corridor confidence, definitely improved. As you can see, some of the other improvements to the area, inventory still remain limited on these corridors that I'm going to talk about on West Washington, 10th Street and 16th. This is going to make a lot more sense when you see the map view. The functional retail that is on the market, it basically is non-existent. The only retail buildings that do come on the market typically are for sale, and right now typically overpriced considering the days on market. And ownership, improved usability, making these white box improvements kind of the standard, but also just made it a lot easier to lease the asset. So understanding the site, the major pros, again, we had strong visibility on Oliver Avenue, and then going into the city, you're sub 5 minutes away from downtown Indianapolis. You have airport or corridor access off of 70, and you have immediate proximity to the Elanco redevelopment. We've already talked about the limited competition nearby. Of course, the main challenge with this property was it doesn't have auto service. So every single person, and this happens a lot with other properties, whether I've helped people purchase or just helping people lease, you have to realize you're going to have to fix your cars. Where is that going to be done? Is that going to be done at another friendly person that has another auto dealership that has bays that you can potentially rent from? Are you fixing these through other means at another location, your own home? You got to realize at this size of property, this is very small. This is, close to 30 cars, and you typically have tranches of dealerships sizes. You have the typical less than 500 to 1,000 square feet for an office, maybe no garage at all, and it can fit maybe 20 to 30 cars. Then you have on the other side, very large dealerships, 100, 200 car plus dealerships that maybe have 5, 10, 15, 20 plus thousand square feet, showrooms, maybe a little bit newer vintage for the year built. Finding a Goldilocks property, which they do exist, that have maybe 40 to 60 or 80 cars for inventory and maybe a couple garages for service. Those do exist, but it's few and far between. So this entry-level asset when it comes to auto service is pretty typical that you see a lot, especially on this side of town. So that was going to be a hindrance when we got this asset. But again, knowing what the market was giving other people and what their alternatives would be if they were going to lease, this still made sense both as an investment and even for a tenant to come lease the asset. So when it comes to overcoming still more of these tenant objections, what does that look like? We have to map out the competition. As you can see, this is what we call the Near Westside. You have on north, West 16th Street, and then north of that is Speedway, so totally different market. We have 10th Street and we have West Washington Street. Of course, you can see the subject property has minimal competition. There's about 1 or 2 auto lots on Oliver. Then you have the majority of your properties on West Washington. So we have identified about 46 identifiable used car dealerships and independent auto sales locations, with the masses being on these streets. So operators are going to want some type of affordable asset for them to lease that's really going to make sense. And we're going to jump into the mechanics of what a typical auto place is going to be making when it comes to per car and the typical amount of cars they're going to be selling per month. So it has to make sense from the rent to revenue ratio, which we talk to all of our clients about, whether it's the landlord or the tenant, on how that's going to be seen and perceived on the affordability of a lease rate. So not every auto user is going to need full mechanical bays to operate. Some of their cars may get work from other places, as we mentioned before. So even though you have a lot of people on these corridors, it still made sense for someone to have little to no competition. And we also got to talk about how they sell their cars here in a second, where some of these things may not be that big of a deal when it comes to their competition. So our landlord positioning with the typical independent used car lot selling vehicles from the $5,000 to $25,000 range, you got to look at where they're getting their sales. Well, they're getting their sales from typical online originated leads, 60 to 80%, and walk-in to drive-by traffic is 20 to 40. Well, when someone says, well, there's not a lot of traffic on this corridor, we have to talk about, of course, the developments we've already mentioned, but also where are you getting your sales? And we got to look at kind of the mean of other dealerships in the market and the people that we interview, that we have interviewed in the 2 times we've leased this property. We had to have their frame of reference. Have you sold cars before? Or are you selling cars now? Because they might be independent, that might be selling through another dealership, and they already have title to X amount of cars that they're selling independent offline, whether it be through Facebook Marketplace, through Craigslist, all these other dealership websites, through social media. And with that being said, they understand where their leads are coming from. It's not that most people are going to be coming to walk in, they drove by, and that's how you're generating your income or your revenue. It's more so you have an online presence, and that's how you're generating business. So we always wanted to bring that up. And the typical 20 to 30 car lot, which this is, that is operating these type of price points, you have to look at how many cars they're typically going to sell. So let's say 6 to 15. And you have to assume, the turn rate on how much they're turning their inventory. And the typical range on what they're going to make on these type of cars is probably about $1,500 to $3,000. So if they're selling 10 cars a month and they're making $3,000 gross, to pay $3,000 a month, and this is a modified gross lease, that's affordable. That is a 10% rent to revenue ratio, which means in layman's terms, they are paying 10% of their gross revenue for their rental purposes. And this is not, of course, going to include utilities and payroll. These are things outside of rent. But we have to make it make sense for both the tenant and both the landlord. And that's key in that regard. So the biggest trend that we see on the Near Westside, there's many things that are happening now. It's a slow progression, but it is happening. We have the Indianapolis Zoo that is launched an expansion, $53 million tied to new exhibits, guest amenities, long-term campus growth inside White River State Park, Henry Street Bridge, which is a brand new $43 to $44 million multimodal bridge connecting downtown. It's still getting built, but this is going to connect downtown Indianapolis to the west side of the White River Innovation District and the new Elanco Animal Health Campus that we've already mentioned before. Indianapolis Zoo attracts 1.2 million annual visitors and contributes nearly $60 million annually to the Indianapolis economy. So when you see this expansion, it's just going to help this area in general. And we always want to press, and we did press, and we got tenant buy-in on this, where while you're in this spot, the area is only going to get better. And we can continue to see that moving forward. So the tenant deal highlights, we have a new tenant with a strong credit profile that already had experience. And now this being an entry-level car dealership and his track record, we believe they'll do very well. Great fit for the site, long-term viability for their lease term, and the landlord achieving a significant rent growth to the prior lease. So it's a win-win both for the landlord and tenant. So, right tenant, right time, and right location. So the key takeaways in this regard, the functional space, is winning. So not every user needs luxury finishes. Auto sales just needs a clean white box, especially at this entry level. Flexibility matters. Rigid ownership can slow leasing velocity. So the properties typically that are typically at this square footage, and really the most important thing is lot size, suffer because the rent is too high. And that's why some of these other properties that I've seen over the last 3.5 years have stayed on the market a little bit too long. So that's, of course, the key driver there. Number 3, the corridor momentum is real. Really, the Elanco coming out the ground is changing perception very fast, with this being a 100-acre campus that is going to slowly but surely attract more development in the future. Positioning matters more than the listing. You have to actually understand the tenant pool that we've dived deep in on the economics of what they're actually making and how that actually makes sense. And then finally, number 5, the timing matters. So retail demand is only going to continue in this area because not a lot of product ever comes up for lease. That's the real key thing here. And other retail assets that I've helped my buyers own in the area, and also starting to develop, buying land, you don't see many product come on the market. Most of the properties that are leased, those are done direct from tenant to landlord with no representation on either side. So the market is very opaque on what that actually looks like. So it's very important to understand when assets like this come up, they will lease. It's just, bringing the facts to any tenant and showing them the benefits of this area. So if any of you guys are in the market to lease, whether it's in this area, you do auto sales or auto service and are having difficulty finding these assets, I would love to talk to you more. And really, this is the time to evaluate positioning, tenant demand, and leasing strategy in this area, especially as a landlord with all of the off-market deals that are happening right now, and kind of getting a pulse on getting into an asset that really makes sense for your portfolio in this area. So I definitely appreciate your time today talking through this, and just wanted to open it up for questions if there is any right now.